Some secrets are buried so deep that they take nearly a decade to surface, and some disappearances are so carefully orchestrated that they fool everyone, including the people who love us most. What I'm about to tell you is a story that will challenge everything you think you know about trust, deception, and how well we really know the people closest to us. This is the incredible true story of Michael Thompson, a man who vanished without a trace in the Colorado Rockies, and the devastating note his wife found 9 years later that revealed he had been living a double life that no one could have imagined. The story begins on what should have been a perfect autumn weekend in October 2014. Michael Thompson, a 42-year-old software engineer from Denver, was an experienced hiker who had been exploring Colorado's mountain trails for over 20 years. He knew the terrain like most people know their neighborhood streets, and he had summited dozens of peaks throughout the Rockies. His wife, Sarah Thompson, was a high school English teacher who shared Michael's love of the outdoors but preferred less challenging hikes than the solo expeditions Michael often undertook. They had been married for 15 years and had built what everyone considered to be an ideal partnership. They were best friends who supported each other's individual interests while maintaining a strong connection as a couple. Michael worked for a tech company in downtown Denver, where he was known as a reliable, methodical programmer who rarely missed deadlines and got along well with his colleagues. He was the kind of person who planned everything carefully, from their annual vacations to their retirement savings, and Sarah had always felt secure knowing that Michael was someone she could depend on completely. On October 18, 2014, Michael told Sarah he was planning a solo hiking trip to Mount Elbert, Colorado's highest peak. It was a challenging but well-traveled trail that he had completed several times before, and he expected to be gone for 2 days, hiking up on Saturday, camping overnight, and returning Sunday evening. "Are you sure you don't want company?" Sarah asked as Michael packed his gear Friday night. "I could take Monday off and we could make it a long weekend together." "Thanks, babe, but I really need some time to clear my head," Michael replied, giving her a kiss on the forehead. "Work has been stressful lately, and you know how I think better when I'm alone on the trail." It was true, Michael had always used hiking as a way to process stress and make important decisions. Sarah understood and respected his need for solitude, even though she sometimes worried about him hiking alone in remote areas. Michael left early Saturday morning, driving his red Toyota 4Runner to the Mount Elbert trailhead. He was carrying his usual hiking gear, a backpack with food for 2 days, camping equipment, first aid supplies, and the GPS device that Sarah insisted he take on all his solo trips. "I'll call you when I get to the summit tomorrow," Michael promised as he left. "And I'll be home by dinner on Sunday." Saturday evening came and went with no call from Michael. Sarah wasn't immediately concerned. Cell phone coverage was spotty in the mountains, and Michael sometimes got so absorbed in the hiking experience that he forgot to check in exactly when he'd promised. But when Sunday evening arrived and Michael hadn't returned home, Sarah began to worry. She called his cell phone repeatedly, but the calls went straight to voicemail. At 10 p.m., she contacted the Clear Creek County Sheriff's Office to report her husband overdue from his hiking trip. The search for Michael Thompson began at dawn on Monday morning. Mountain rescue teams, accompanied by search dogs and helicopter support, combed the Mount Elbert area looking for any sign of the missing hiker. What they found was deeply puzzling. Michael's Toyota 4Runner was discovered in the Mount Elbert trailhead parking lot, exactly where it should have been. His hiking gear was gone, indicating that he had indeed set out on the trail as planned. But despite extensive searching over the next week, rescue teams found no trace of Michael himself. The search expanded to cover surrounding peaks and valleys, based on the possibility that Michael had decided to extend his route or had become lost and wandered off the main trail. Search and rescue volunteers scoured hundreds of square miles of wilderness, but they found no footprints, no camping evidence, and no equipment belonging to Michael Thompson. Most mysteriously, Michael's GPS device, which should have been tracking his movements throughout the hike, was never found. The device was designed to store location data even if it was damaged, and its absence suggested either that it had been destroyed completely or that it had been deliberately removed from the search area. After 2 weeks of intensive searching, the official rescue operation was scaled back to a recovery mission. The prevailing theory was that Michael had suffered some kind of accident, perhaps a fall from a cliff or a medical emergency, in a location so remote that his body might never be found. But Sarah Thompson refused to accept that explanation. Michael was too experienced to just disappear, she insisted to anyone who would listen. He knew those mountains better than anyone. He wouldn't have taken unnecessary risks, and he wouldn't have gone off trail without telling someone. Sarah organized her own search efforts, bringing in private investigators and specialized search teams. She offered rewards for information, posted flyers throughout Colorado, and maintained an active social media campaign asking for help in finding her husband. The investigation into Michael's disappearance turned up few clues. His bank accounts showed no unusual activity after October 18. His work computer and personal devices revealed nothing suspicious. His friends and colleagues all described him as a devoted husband who showed no signs of wanting to disappear voluntarily. There was only one small anomaly that investigators couldn't explain. On the morning of his hiking trip, Michael had withdrawn $500 in cash from an ATM near the trailhead. It was unusual for him to carry that much cash on a hiking trip, but not necessarily suspicious. As months turned to years, the case of Michael Thompson's disappearance became one of Colorado's most puzzling missing person cases. Sarah continued her search efforts, but she gradually had to accept the reality that Michael was likely dead and that his body might never be recovered. She struggled with grief, guilt, and the particular anguish that comes with not knowing what happened to someone you love. Well-meaning friends and family members eventually began encouraging her to consider moving on with her life, but Sarah felt like she couldn't properly grieve without knowing the truth about what had happened to Michael. In 2020, 6 years after Michael's disappearance, Sarah finally made the difficult decision to have him declared legally dead. It was a painful but necessary step that allowed her to settle his estate and begin the process of rebuilding her life. But Sarah kept Michael's belongings exactly as he had left them. His office remained untouched, his clothes stayed in their closet, and his hiking gear remained in the garage where he had stored it. It was while going through Michael's hiking equipment in March 2023, nearly 9 years after his disappearance, that Sarah made a discovery that would change everything she thought she knew about her husband and his disappearance. Sarah was finally preparing to donate Michael's outdoor gear to a local hiking club when she decided to check all the pockets one final time for any forgotten items. Most of the jackets and pants contained nothing more than old energy bar wrappers and trail maps, but in the inside pocket of Michael's favorite hiking jacket, Sarah found something that stopped her cold. It was a handwritten note, folded small and tucked deep into the pocket. The paper was weathered, as if it had been there for a long time, and the handwriting was unmistakably Michael's. The note read, "Sarah, if you're reading this, then something has gone wrong and you found this note. I'm so sorry for what I'm about to tell you, but you deserve to know the truth. I haven't been the husband you thought I was. For the past 3 years, I've been living a double life that I never meant to start but couldn't figure out how to stop. Her name is Jennifer Walsh, and she lives in Glenwood Springs. We met at a conference in 2011, and what started as a friendship became something more. I know there's no excuse for what I've done, and I know this will destroy everything we built together. I've been using my hiking trips to see her. The weekend trips, the solo expeditions, most of them weren't really about hiking. I would drive to Glenwood Springs, spend time with Jennifer, and then come home and lie to you about where I'd been. But something has happened that changes everything. Jennifer is pregnant, and she wants me to leave you and start a new life with her. I can't do that to you, but I also can't keep living this lie. I don't know what I'm going to do. I keep thinking about just disappearing, starting over somewhere else where I can't hurt anyone anymore. I know that's cowardly, but I feel trapped between two lives and I don't see any way out that doesn't destroy people I care about. If something happens to me, I want you to know that despite everything, I do love you. You deserve so much better than the husband I've been. I'm sorry for all of it. Michael. Sarah read the note 3 times before the full implications sank in. Michael hadn't died in a hiking accident. He had been planning to disappear, and apparently, he had succeeded. The revelation was devastating on multiple levels. Not only was Michael alive, meaning Sarah had spent 9 years grieving a man who had chosen to abandon her, but he had been cheating on her for years and had used his supposed love of hiking to cover up his affair. Sarah's first instinct was to call the police, but she realized that if Michael had staged his own disappearance, he might not technically be guilty of any crime beyond insurance fraud, if he had collected any death benefits, which he hadn't because his body was never found. Instead, Sarah hired a private investigator to find Jennifer Walsh in Glenwood Springs and trace what had happened to Michael. What the investigator discovered completed the picture of Michael's deception. Further investigation revealed that Michael had been living off the grid for the past 9 years, using a false identity and working cash jobs throughout the western United States. He had been spotted in Nevada, Utah, and Montana, always moving frequently and never staying in one place long enough to establish roots. Armed with this information, Sarah faced a choice. She could pursue legal action against Michael for the emotional and financial damage his disappearance had caused, or she could simply let him remain disappeared and focus on rebuilding her own life. But there was also another consideration: Jennifer's daughter, Michael's daughter, who was now 8 years old and had never known her father. Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. Instead of focusing on finding Michael, she reached out to Jennifer Walsh. "I know this situation is incredibly complicated," Sarah told Jennifer during their first phone conversation. "But your daughter is innocent in all of this, and she deserves to know that her father's disappearance wasn't her fault." Sarah and Jennifer met in person and, despite the awkward circumstances, found that they had more in common than just having been deceived by the same man. Both were strong, independent women who had been hurt by Michael's selfishness, and both were concerned about the welfare of Jennifer's daughter. Together, they decided to tell the authorities what they had discovered about Michael's disappearance. The case was officially reclassified from a missing person investigation to a fraud case, though by this point the statute of limitations had expired on most potential charges. More importantly, Sarah and Jennifer worked together to create a trust fund for Michael's daughter, using money from the sale of Sarah and Michael's house. They wanted to ensure that the child would have resources for college and wouldn't be financially penalized for her father's choices. Jennifer Walsh was a real person, a 38-year-old nurse who worked at a hospital in Glenwood Springs. She had indeed been in a relationship with Michael Thompson, just as the note described. But according to Jennifer, Michael had told her that he was divorced and that his marriage had ended years earlier. "He showed me divorce papers," Jennifer told the investigator. "He said his wife lived in California now and that they rarely spoke. I had no idea he was still married and living with someone in Denver." Jennifer confirmed that she had been pregnant in late 2014, and that Michael had been supportive of the pregnancy. But she also revealed something that Sarah's investigator hadn't expected: Michael had never disappeared with Jennifer or started a new life in Glenwood Springs. "The last time I saw Michael was in October 2014, Jennifer explained. "He came to visit me the weekend before I was due to have the baby, and he seemed really stressed and conflicted about something. He kept talking about how he needed to make things right, but he never explained what he meant. He left on Sunday morning, saying he needed to go back to Denver to take care of some things, and that he would call me in a few days to discuss our future together. But I never heard from him again." Jennifer had tried to contact Michael after their daughter was born, but his phone number had been disconnected. She had eventually assumed that he had decided he didn't want to be part of their child's life and had moved on with her own life, raising their daughter as a single mother. The investigators' report revealed that Michael Thompson had indeed staged his own disappearance, but not to start a new life with Jennifer. Instead, he had simply vanished, leaving behind both Sarah and Jennifer, along with a daughter he had never met. "I spent 9 years thinking I was a widow," Sarah reflected in an interview. "Learning that I was actually abandoned was devastating in a different way. But meeting Jennifer and her daughter helped me understand that Michael hurt a lot of people with his selfishness, and that the best thing I could do was try to minimize the damage to the people who were truly innocent." The story of Michael Thompson's fake disappearance became a cautionary tale about the lengths people will go to avoid taking responsibility for their choices. But it also became a story about the resilience of the people he left behind and their determination to create something positive from his betrayal. Sarah eventually moved to a new city and started over, pursuing a master's degree in counseling with the goal of helping other people deal with grief and loss. She has no interest in seeing Michael again, even if he were found. Jennifer continued to raise her daughter as a single mother but gained a strong support system in Sarah, who became an honorary aunt figure in the child's life. As for Michael Thompson, he remains missing by choice. Occasionally, there are unconfirmed sightings in various western states, but he has successfully managed to stay off the grid for nearly a decade. "Some people think I should hate him," Sarah said in a recent interview. "But mostly I just feel sorry for him. He threw away everything good in his life because he was too cowardly to face the consequences of his mistakes. He's been running for 9 years, and he'll probably keep running for the rest of his life." The note that Sarah found in Michael's jacket pocket answered the question of what happened to her husband, but it also raised new questions about how well we can ever really know another person. Michael had been leading a double life for years, and Sarah had never suspected anything was wrong. "I used to torture myself wondering what signs I missed," Sarah admitted. "But I've realized that some people are very good at hiding who they really are. The Michael I was married to wasn't completely fake, he was just one side of a person who was more complicated and more selfish than I ever imagined." Today, Sarah keeps the note that revealed the truth about Michael's disappearance, not as a memento of their marriage, but as a reminder that sometimes the most shocking discoveries are hiding in the most ordinary places. Sometimes the truth takes 9 years to surface, and sometimes the person you're grieving is alive and well and simply chose to walk away from the life you built together. But sometimes, as Sarah learned, the end of one story is just the beginning of another, better one. Don't forget to like the videos and subscribe to the channel for more short stories.